You're watching the Politicket podcast.
Good evening. Welcome to Politicket podcast. I'm Senator John Johnson, and we've got Sabin Howard back with us.
I'm honored.
It's
Thank
nice for you to be here. You're making progress on this Grand Liberty Arch, and let's go back just a little bit. I want to kind of reintroduce you. I mean, you've been called the Michelangelo of our time. I think that's a great thing. Let's talk a little bit about your background. Just briefly, because we talked about it before, but let's talk briefly about your background and what really got you into this. And then we'll talk about the World War I Memorial and what brought you to Utah.
At 19, on October 21st at 4 p.m., I decided, okay, enough of this. I'm wasting my life. I need to find purpose. And I called up an art school, asked them how do you go to art school? And they said, well, you need a portfolio. And I said, what is a portfolio? So I'm saying that because I started at zero. And my idea of what art was Michelangelo, Raphael, and Leonardo. And I had no idea that there was this thing called modern art. And so I began that voyage, and I treated it like sports where you train every day. I practiced drawing. I didn't know how to draw at all, and I just showed up every day, and I learned how to persevere on something, which is really looking at the universe through the eyes of an education, an artistic education that stemmed back to Western civilization. And so at 35 years of that and living in New York City, and I finally realized that I'm facing a wall with modern art and I'm never going to get around that. And I entered into this global competition for the National World War I Memorial. 360 global teams apply. And January of 2016, it's announced that I'm the winner of that. And the next 9.5 years bring me to completion on September 13th of 2024, last year, of the Soldier's Journey, which is a 60-foot-long, 38-figure composition weighing 25 tons, 150 yards from the White House. And after that, I scratched my head, and here I am in Salt Lake with the idea, it's not just an idea, it will happen, of creating our country's largest figurative monument, and probably the world's largest figurative monument in the last 200 years.
Fantastic.
Thank you.
And so what brought you to that idea? I mean, you talked about this conflict with the modern art and what you're really trying to accomplish. Let's talk a little bit about that.
All right. So when you reach a really high level of ability and purpose. So that's what happened to me when I really had to be elevated as a human being through the last process, and I didn't want to go backwards. And so last fall, after this had been unveiled, and I'm back at my house in Connecticut in the middle of the woods, I really asked God and Christ, like, what is my path? What is my meaning? What is my purpose? And I got clarity because Senator Mike Lee came. He was the only actually government official that was at the unveiling, and he and Sharon, his wife, had a conversation with Tracy, and my wife, on a Sunday afternoon. They said, you really need to look at Salt Lake. So I flew out here. And I was in Temple Square, and I called my wife, Tracy, on the phone, and I said, Tracy, we need to come here. This place holds a sacredness that I have not seen in the United States. So I didn't get commissioned by anybody. I got commissioned by God. And so in March, the two of us packed up our house into 3 pods, and we got in a Sprinter van and drove across the country in 3 days, arriving here March 14th, traveling through Wyoming. We hit a storm and 60-mile-an-hour winds.
Uh-huh.
And really, I've been embraced in a way by the community here because we have shared values.
So what was it? What was it at Temple Square that hit you, do you think?
I grew up in Italy, born in New York City in 1963, and immediately went back to Italy. My mother's Italian, from Torino. So I was raised in an environment that looks at the proportions of a human being and builds a city around those proportions. It takes into account the concept that we are built as men and women in God's image. And it also takes into account that the universe is constructed with divine order. And that stems from the ideologies and philosophies of the Greeks that the Romans then played forward, the Renaissance played forward, and then it's still present in European visual splendor. And so that part was innate. It was my first 3 years of life, I was in that environment. And we come back to New York City and you're looking at, okay, Vietnam, Watergate, that kind of stuff, which is complete chaos, but also it is a defining moment for our country. There's a lot of destruction that went on in the 60s that was about tearing down tenets of society that they're old, they're fuddy-duddy, they don't have any value for us as we proceed into the future. But it was a think outside the box moment. So I got raised in that ideology of there is no limit in terms of what you can pursue, you can create and manifest your vision. That's a very American thing. And that's basically who I am.
That's part of the culture here, right?
Yes.
Of being American and realizing those things. But you bring up the 60s and the chaos.
Yes.
That occurred there. What happened, do you think, in the art world to go from beauty and purpose, let's say from the Renaissance coming forward, and then all of a sudden it almost seems chaotic to me.
Yeah.
So how can you describe that in terms of art and the way it evolved?
This is so ironic. I get handed the commission to make the World War I Memorial. World War I is the line in the sand where 22 million people are decimated globally. And then how can there be a God? And so then you have this sense of like, okay, families, villages, cities, jobs, and the environment is complete, it's a moonscape. And the horror of it is so outside our comprehension today. 22 million people. I mean, you're talking 50,000, 75,000, sometimes dying in an afternoon. So this is now, for our society, a way that the human condition changes. And you have all of a sudden Sartre and Camus coming out of France, the idea of nihilism and being alone. And then that's not the way things were. We were a cohesive society, all interwoven and unified within the universe. That's what came out of the Renaissance. Art imitates life. Sure enough, you get the beginning of Dadaist. This guy makes up a urinal and calls it, art. So man decides what is art because he can. So his ego decides. It's not some higher power. You're no longer tied to something sacred. You no longer belong to something larger than yourself. It's eliminated. And then World War II happens. And World War II brings in this American identity. We break away from Europe, and with the Rockefellers and Doubleday Books and the MoMA in New York City, the Modern Art Museum, all of a sudden you have this thing called modern art that is the identity of the United States. And I don't know if they thought this out clearly or not, but it was really, okay, we're going to head forward and we're going to make something that's purely American. It's throwing out everything that preceded that moment, all of Western civilization, and you're cutting it off, and you're proceeding forward with no identity and just flying by the seat of your pants, and all these things that had been of value to human beings and how they should behave and how they should proceed forward is dismissed as irrelevant.
Yeah, and that's really the dawn of the progressive era, right?
Exactly.
And what's interesting to me is when you look at the Renaissance, I mean, here we're coming out of the dark ages
Yes.
into the light,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And it's almost like history repeating itself.
It is.
In a lot of ways, right?
It's incredible. And I landed in Utah, and this is not an accident that I ended up here. You have the sense of faith, you have the sense of family, which is community as well, and you have the sense of country and being patriotic to your country. And so now that's already standing in the way of like this, like, well, we're all separate, it's all chaos. It's no. There's something that binds all these people here in Utah together. And the biggest thing I found was kindness, that kindness is actually here. I'll give you an example. I'm riding home from my studio in New Jersey, and I'm across the river on my bike. I go head downtown. My house was on the west side of New York City, and I'm going 30 miles an hour down the road. This car all of a sudden does a U-turn in front of me, but he looks at me. He looks at me first, and then he does the U-turn, and I have to squeal on my brakes, and I barely miss hitting him by like a foot. That would never happen here in Utah because actually people care about other people. There's a kindness.
Interesting. We're going to take a break and we'll come right back.
Tired of media bias? Frustrated by political noise? Politicket.com cuts through the clutter, giving you real facts, clear analysis, and unbiased insight on the issues that matter most. Stay informed, stay empowered. Whether it's elections, policy changes, or breaking news, we've got you covered. No spin, no agendas, just truth you can trust. Visit Politicket.com today because informed citizens shape the future. Politicket.com, where politics meets clarity.
Welcome back to Politicket. We've got Sabin Howard with us today, and you know, Sabin, we were talking right before the break of this whole movement. You know, you were talking about World War I and World War II, where we're defined, but then all of a sudden we've got this move backwards in some ways, right, in the progressive era, and you know, I want to talk just a little bit more about what do you see in modern art that's missing from the tradition that you appreciate?
We're at a crossroads right now. The whole art world is collapsing. The gallery system, the museums, the critics, the universities are not grabbing attention in general populace. And general populace is a very good barometer of the reality of what is actually there. And they're saying you are irrelevant to the modernists because they don't use those values, which are really very much about seeing human beings as ironic and separate and not uplifting your consciousness. It's like if you look at a piece of modern art, it's very cerebral and it doesn't do anything for you except makes you think about your demise and how separate you are from the rest of the universe. It's a very tragic vision of who we are. And it's just not functioning. And if you ask, I would say 99 out of 100 people, let's say in an airport, and you held up like a de Kooning and then you showed them the David, everyone would say, that's art, I don't know what the hell that is.
Yeah, it's interesting, huh? And you know, when you think about the Renaissance, I mean, that's the reemergence,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
That's the rebirth. That's
Yes.
the, you know, coming out of the dark ages into the light,
Yes.
right?
Yes.
And you know, you talked about this last time we discussed, you know, what Leonardo and others were really putting forward,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And
Well, the whole idea is like, you get in the Medici court in Florence, these philosophers like Marcello Ficino, and they're saying, it's on you as a human being. You are responsible for how you are going to deal with the God-given gift of life. What are you going to do with your life? What is going to be your purpose? Are you going to elevate your consciousness, or are you going to fall to like an animal level and have no purpose and basically be very crude as a human being? And I think that is a timeless message that I have also found here in Salt Lake in Utah. It's like, it's on you. Agency, self-responsibility, and what are you going to do with your life? What is your vision? What is your purpose? And I'm making a correlation here that's why I arrived here. It's not an accident, it's not a mistake. It's because these are the values that my art carries, and these are the values that I wish to use in playing forward this giant grand liberty arch for the community. I'm here to serve the community.
Right. Well, and I liked how you started the conversation where you said, hey, I arrived at this day in my life where I decided I needed purpose and I needed to build something.
Yes.
And this is a continuation of that, right?
Yeah.
It's kind of a fulfillment of...
There's a very beautiful thing. It's poetic, and it's a form that permeates all art form. It's light and dark. Renaissance art is completely about moving towards the light. What does light do? It illuminates. It shines information and interest in an area. We are creatures of the sun. We move towards the light. You don't move towards the dark. I mean, that's tragic. That's like something that it's like you move towards higher purpose. And art, with Western civilization, that was its purpose. Show human beings, humanity. How do you move towards light? And then all of a sudden, you have this tragic thing where World War I, so how can there be light when there's huge destruction on the planet? And it's the end of like thinking about, okay, God and light, and now let's go towards what has just happened, darkness. We are emerging from that. And this is a prime example of Salt Lake. It's a flourishing urban area. It's a rising city. I think Utah is number 4 on the most sought after states in the 50 states. And it's booming, and it's projected to double in population in another 5 years. This area is 2.6 million? They're projecting it'll go to 5. People are moving here. The average age is 31 years of age. That's why I came, and I cannot believe the difference between East Coast and here.
So let's talk about this Grand Liberty Arch, okay? Describe it to me.
This is something that has come to me after 43 years of being an artist, and not just dabbling, but at least doing 40 hours a week. So I've looked at life models for 80,000 hours and sculpted, 80,000 hours in my lifetime. And so I've learned a little bit about like, what is a human being? And so I said, well, let's make a monument that brings us together and elevates our consciousness. And let's do a monument that transforms people when they go there. And so I came up with an idea that is not just one idea, it's made up of multiple ideologies. When you look at this monument from a distance, you are seeing the whole picture. But when you move up to it, there are these relief panels that surround it. They're 4-sided, and in the middle of that is an arch. And you can look at those relief panels because they are 6 panels that describe a philosophy of our history. It's not the history, it's a philosophy of our history about agency, self-responsibility, and manifesting our vision. And that's what the United States was built on by the founding fathers. Then there's an arch in the middle, and above the arch are 12-foot high scale figures that speak on the one side of the raising and inception of the flag and the building of our country. Now, as you walk through, you are going to be walking 16 feet through an arch. Falling off the front is a flag that's being raised, and on each side in the front, you have George Washington and his men with the war of the
Crossing the Delaware.
Yeah, and it's the War of Independence. And on the other side, on the right side, you have the signing of the Declaration. Very, very large figures breaking the frame because they cannot be contained. They're human beings, and it's the modern day Parthenon because you can reach out and touch them. The figures up above, you cannot touch. They are unattainable. They are 12-foot high figures. It is the theories that govern us, liberty and freedom. And so that's the front. The sides are the transition because our ideas of liberty and freedom change. The sides are emancipation and settlers in their struggle with Native American Indians. and the other side is the fight for the flag, which was the Civil War. That era of 1860 to 1880 is the redefining of our country and what liberty and freedom was. So let's go now through the arch, and now we're on the other side, and it's about the West. And on the top, a giant wheel is being pulled forward, and on the left side, on that side, you have westward expansion, and on the right side, you have the 20th century with this move towards the future. It's a very human statement about who we are, and I think that's very badly needed today, because we're moving away from the modernist idea that human beings do not matter. I'm saying human beings are sacred, and that's what this monument is first and foremost about.
So what do people need to know in order to get involved in this?
Well, I came out here and I've been meeting some very important people that run the state, and we are raising funds to create this piece. It's going to end up in Salt Lake City proper, right in the center, or it may be slightly farther west near the airport. And there are lots of building projects going on. And I think right now we're getting close to launch. And land needs to be designated and nailed down, because as soon as that happens, there will be a flow of money towards this project.
Very good. So what are you working on right at the moment?
Right now, I'm working on the connection of where the project will end up. And once you have an anchor of a location, all of a sudden, then you can go to the next step. And I will be building for our country's 250th birthday an 8-foot model, 3-dimensional, that I can share with the nation. And I want to say that I made a choice. I was called by the West Wing and the White House to design the Garden of Heroes about 2 weeks ago, and I said, I cannot do it. I am walking away from that project. And I am making a statement that Salt Lake is that important to our country.
Interesting. So we're about out of time. So why don't you make a pitch to people to get involved with this? What would you say to people watching
I can
this?
say, okay, my website is sabinhoward.com, and you can reach me at sabinhoward.com. And if you want to know more, just send me an email, and I can fill you in. We're very, very close to closing on the model to make that for our country's birthday. This will be the largest monument in our nation, actually. You have the Lincoln Memorial, you have the Statue of Liberty, Mount Rushmore. It's time we make another destination monument now that defines who we are and how we should move forward, thinking about the past as a strategy to not repeat those same mistakes in the future.
Very good. Thank you very much. Sabin Howard. We'll see you guys next week.